I'm Truck Smith. I'm about 5 feet 9 inches tall, and I'm 46 years old. I've been living in a small town in West Virginia with my wife Sharon for 12 years. We rent a small 3-bedroom house that also has a 2-car garage. I work as an engineer, and my boss Jim is always trying to control every little thing I do, even though he has no clue about my work. He constantly tries to tell me what to do and keeps track of all my working hours. It's pretty funny because he's the sales department manager, which is a bit of a joke. I'm on a salary, and I design surgical kits for hospitals. Sharon also works at the same place as me, but she's a production manager. Interestingly, she earns more than I do. Sometimes I feel like everyone takes advantage of me, and they don't really care about me or my feelings. Lately, I've had suspicions that my wife might be cheating on me. We used to have closeness about 3 or 4 times a week. Nothing extraordinary, as Sharon isn't really into trying new things. But for the past year, she hasn't even given me a kiss. I know her family is helping her figure out how to get rid of me. We don't have any kids, so it's just the 2 of us. Her mom and sister are always hanging out together, either at our place or going to bars. When we got married, they accused me of being with her just for her money. They made me sign a prenuptial agreement, which stated that if either of us cheats, we only leave with what we had before the marriage. But I've never even looked at another woman. I'm at a point where I'm about to patent some specialized surgical tools, and it's worth millions. When I initially shared the idea with the company I work for, they showed zero interest. They even sent me a memo warning me not to work on it during my work hours, threatening to fire me if I did. So I started working on it at home in my basement. Then, about 2 months ago, I discovered surveillance cameras in my workspace. The only person who knew I was making progress was my wife. To be sure of what was happening, I bought some cheap cameras of my own. I have video evidence of her talking on the phone with my boss Jim. I couldn't hear their entire conversation, but from what I gathered from her side, I found out that she and Jim have been having an affair for over a year, and they're planning to steal my ideas. I've caught my wife Sharon talking to her mom Jean and her sister Joan. They always put their conversations on speaker so I can hear everything. They discuss things like kicking me out, stealing my money, or just humiliating me in general. Feeling the need to talk things through with someone, I reached out to an old army buddy of mine named Tom. When we served together, we didn't do anything extraordinary. I operated heavy equipment while he worked as a mechanic. But I find it helpful to talk things out with him. I brought the recordings of their conversations to show him. He suggested that I bring my belongings to his garage and start designing worthless stuff for them. To keep my real designs hidden, I transferred them to another computer and filled my old computer with junk. I made sure to keep the file names the same so that Jim wouldn't notice any changes. I also purchased more advanced cameras and recorders to gather more evidence and understand their plan better. I installed cameras in the bedrooms, kitchen, and living room. Let's dive into the mysteries of time and uncover its hidden secrets and surprising truths as we explore this essential part of our existence. The day after I installed the cameras, I captured a video of Sharon and Jim having closeness in my own bed. It's shocking because Sharon never showed interest in being close with me. But on the video, she's enjoying it with Jim. They discuss me and their plans for when my ideas are ready to be sold. I can't figure out what I did to make them hate me. Sharon talks about me as if I'm just a clueless employee instead of her husband. It seems like she only values me for my ideas and for doing yard work. She has genuine contempt for me. I'm finished with my ideas, but I want them to believe that I won't be done until after I return from my 2-week camping vacation. Jim is undermining my work by telling the company owners that my ideas are worthless and causing financial loss to the company. His goal is to ensure the company cannot claim my work. Meanwhile, Jim is planning to go on a business trip where he intends to sell my ideas and make it seem like I'm worthless. In addition to his affair with Sharon, Jim is also involved with my sister-in-law Jean and mother-in-law Joan. Sharon even joins them. And it turns out they are all bi and enjoy the closeness. If it weren't for their hatred towards me, I would actually love to be a part of it. They treat me terribly. I got so aroused watching them that I had to masturbate. Joan always called me a pervert. My plan is to send videos of their activities to everyone in their church and family. It's ironic because Joan always insisted that I should go to church. I wonder how often she attends once this is all over. While Jim is away, Sharon suddenly decided she would allow me to be close with her. She was in the mood, and I would have obliged, but I declined, saying I wasn't feeling well. She then tried to recall the last time we were close, but she couldn't remember. She brought it up, and I reminded her that she's the one who didn't want it. I told her I would sleep in the spare bedroom so that I wouldn't get her sick. I don't care if the company I work for supports Jim more than me. Quitting wouldn't bother me. I withdrew money from my 401k and opened a new retirement account with a different firm. I also requested a month-long vacation. Jim hinted that my job might not be available when I come back. I informed him that I planned on going camping for a couple of weeks and that I had some personal matters to take care of. I started moving my belongings out of the house, including my tools, hunting and fishing equipment, and camping gear. Sharon finally noticed and commented that it's about time I clean up my stuff. She never showed any interest in activities like camping or anything I wanted to do. I can't help but wonder why she even married me. I found a small house in the neighboring town that I can rent on a month-to-month basis. It'll be a good place for me to work on my designs. The best part is that it has a 2-car garage, so even if they happen to drive by, they won't realize I live there. Luckily, there's no issue with Cindy, the personnel manager, and Sharon getting along. They won't discuss my 401k situation, which is a relief. Sharon and I have separate checking and savings accounts, and that was her idea in the first place. I own a 6-year-old 4x4 pickup truck, while she drives a brand new BMW. I've been the one paying all the household bills, such as phone, electricity, cable, and trash pickup. I've also been taking care of a credit card bill. What Sharon doesn't know is that I've transferred all the bills to be under her name. Last month, I stopped making the payments. My friend, Tom, suggested that I make a to-do list, outlining the tasks I need to accomplish. I made a checklist and started checking things off as I took care of them. I had already cleared out my closet and the dresser where I kept my clothes. Sharon had long ago stopped doing my laundry, and she wouldn't even consider helping with it. She acted like she was way better than me. I had informed her that I would be going camping for 2 weeks starting on Saturday, but she didn't seem to care. She mentioned that she, her mom, and her sister were planning to go to a bar. When I arrived home, she was just leaving. She didn't even notice that I didn't speak to her. I quickly gathered the rest of my belongings and made sure I had taken everything I wanted from the house. I disassembled the bed in the spare room and took the dresser and a few selected pictures. There wasn't much worth taking. I locked the door, got into my truck, and never looked back. I managed to sell my patents for $5 million within the first week. During that first week, Jim called me and informed me that I was fired, just as he had warned me. He would have to explain why there are no new kits being designed, why our customers hadn't received any calls for new orders, and why the new kits they were expecting weren't even designed. I had sent letters to our competitors, revealing all of this information. I kept an eye on my phone for 3 weeks, and finally, she texted me, asking when I would be coming back home. I had been neglecting my responsibilities, like mowing the lawn, and I knew she didn't truly care. I intentionally left behind the recordings I had made of her, Jim, her mom, and sister. I attached a piece of paper with her name on them. In the first recording, I left a message revealing that I was aware of their plans to deceive me and take my money. I also mentioned that copies of these recordings were being sent out to her colleagues, friends from church and family. And then it happened. My phone started buzzing non-stop. She was calling me every 5 minutes, and even Jim, Jean, and Joan were calling too. She had discovered the recordings and just now realized that I had left 3 weeks ago. I then sent copies of everything through mail to our workplace, our friends, and the church. Everyone received copies, and I even uploaded a significant portion of it on various private platforms, sharing the site names with everyone. I smashed the phone and watched the chaos unfold. I also made sure to send the recording of Jim firing me to the company, so they would know who deserved the credit. Consequently, Jim got fired, and Sharon lost her job as well. I decided to invest in a partial ownership stake in one of our competitors. I was familiar with the owner, Perry, and how he treated his employees. His company had more of a family-oriented atmosphere. I had been having confidential meetings with him, as his company was not excessively aggressive in the industry. I had a conversation with Perry, where I emphasized that I didn't want the town to suffer and that the majority of the people were excellent workers. He understood my intentions and saw an opportunity to acquire the equipment and factory at a low cost. I'd already found a couple of design engineers for him and trained them in creating kits that I knew hospitals would find desirable. I also showed them how to provide excellent customer service. After about a week of the plant being operational again, Jim unexpectedly shows up for a job interview. During the interview with Perry, Jim claims that he was the one who kept the old company running smoothly. He even tries to put in a good word for Sharon, perhaps thinking they could simply walk in and take control. Now, it's time for revenge. We live in a world where marriages and divorces are common, but I can't understand why people cheat on their partners. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope you enjoyed it. I welcome any advice or suggestions. Moving forward with the story, I had filed for divorce. When Sharon arrived, she believed she would soon be entitled to a significant sum of money from the new company. She was furious with me for transferring all the household bills to her. Instead of attending the meeting, I observed from another room where my lawyer, Sid, was ready. As soon as the meeting began, he placed the prenuptial agreement on the table and pressed play on a recording. It exposed them having closeness and discussing their plans to take my money. They also mocked and humiliated me while laughing throughout the whole ordeal. I granted my attorney the written power of attorney to handle my divorce. I informed them that I would check in with them after 2 weeks, without revealing my whereabouts. On a Monday morning, Sharon received the divorce papers citing her adultery. Sid, my lawyer, advised Sharon to simply sign the papers to avoid public exposure and potential legal consequences. She complied and signed the divorce papers. Upon signing, she mentioned how she would soon be making good money again and added that she was done with someone like me. I wanted to sue Jim for alienation of affection, but unfortunately, Massachusetts doesn't allow such lawsuits. It seems like too many state politicians were facing similar legal actions. However, poor Jim and his companions ended up losing their jobs anyway, as per my agreement with the new company owners. It's a shame to see all his belongings gone. Sharon was now in a situation where she owed more money than she had in her bank account. Predators were after her, and her cars had been repossessed. The power and water services had been shut off as well. Both property taxes and mortgage payments were now overdue. Sharon's parents' house had been completely ruined, so they had to rent cars for themselves. It saddened me to think about all the problems they were facing. Jim had to move in with them, too, as his own property had also been damaged. In desperation, he had to plead with Sharon's parents to rent him a car as well. They all ended up driving little Ford cars. Sharon and her family decided to hire private investigators to locate me. However, their attempts to delay the divorce proceedings turned out to be a terrible move on their part. The case became highly publicized due to DNA testing and videos of their closeness being circulated on the internet. There was also audio evidence revealing the duration of the affair, the fact that the entire family knew about it and encouraged it, their plans to ruin and humiliate me in public, take my money, and their disdain for the middle class. There were videos and audio recordings exposing Sharon's family, engaging in bribery with politicians and corrupting public officials, disrespecting those who were honest. I made sure to upload this evidence on various websites that specialize in exposing such content. Eventually, the divorce proceedings reached a conclusion. The judge who was originally assigned to the case had to recuse himself because he was one of the exposed public officials who had been bribed. On the day when the divorce was officially finalized, the company organized an employee appreciation day and a grand opening event. Sharon, her sister, mother, and Jim attended, thinking they could simply walk in and take control. I had them seated at the front table. And when Perry, presumably the company owner, introduced me, he credited me as the person responsible for making everything happen. Sharon suddenly rushed towards me, angrily calling me a deceptive person. Everyone around was listening. I calmly reminded her that I didn't have to be present during the divorce proceedings and that she was given a choice. I wanted to ensure that everyone knew the truth, so some of the recorded evidence was played on a large TV screen. To maintain privacy, certain body parts were blurred, and parts of the conversation were censored with bleeps. Jim threatened to gather the old owners and sue me, claiming that I had sabotaged the company. In response, a recording of Jim firing me was played, complete with the date. Then, I introduced the 2 new design engineers and asked them to confirm who actually designed the new kits. They clearly stated that it was me. Beforehand, I had already discussed with the previous owners the possibility of my return. But with an increased salary, they rejected the offer, and I have recorded evidence to support this. Furthermore, I possess a signed memo from Jim stating that the specialized tools I had been working on belonged exclusively to me and that I did not develop them at the company. The memo explicitly warned that if I even thought about working on those tools, I would be fired. They had no valid arguments to defend themselves, and they knew it. They had chosen to side with Jim against me, and now they had lost. At the new company, Everyone received pay raises and a better benefits package. Hard-working individuals who I personally knew and trusted, and who were skilled at their jobs, were given well-deserved promotions. I took Cindy aside and had a private conversation with her. I warned her to be cautious around my ex, and if she encountered any issues with them, I urged her to let me know. I reassured her that she could share anything with me, without hesitation, because I understood how manipulative they could be. I emphasized that there was nothing she could do to change my trust in her. I informed Cindy that she was now in charge of this division, and expressed my confidence in her ability to handle the role. I encouraged her not to hesitate to ask any questions if needed. I assured her that I would check in on her occasionally to offer support. In the final part of the story, after a year had passed, somehow they managed to find me. People in town informed me that someone had been asking about my whereabouts. Additionally, I discovered from my wife's emails that they were aware of my location. 2 guys landed on a pond near my property during the night. I was prepared for their arrival. I had installed video surveillance, so when they forcefully entered my home, I shot, aiming to hurt rather than end. They never expected it, but they were intending to harm me by entering my house. Someone had suggested using rock salt instead of steel in the tool, but that only works in the movies. After the incident, I inspected their plane and took what I needed. I then contacted the state police and informed them that 2 individuals had attempted to harm me, but that I had managed to apprehend them. The following morning, the state police arrived by air and arrested the culprits, securing the evidence that indicated their intention. Initially, the 2 men claimed to the police that they were merely lost and had approached my property to ask for directions. However, the surveillance video clearly contradicted their statement, as did the evidence found in their plane. They spent weeks in the hospital receiving treatment for their injuries before being sent to jail. Eventually, they divulged to the police who had hired them and the purpose behind their actions. After all that had happened, I flew to Maryland to take care of some unfinished business. I went to a restaurant that I knew her family often visited. As they walked right past me, they didn't recognize me. I now have long gray hair, a beard, and I'm in better shape than before. I asked the waiter to send their table a bottle of champagne. Looking at them, it was evident that the whole family had aged about 20 years. They glanced at me, and after a few minutes, Sharon suddenly yelled out, "Oh my God, you son of a witch." She had finally recognized me and proceeded to inform the rest of her family who I was. Sharon came rushing towards me, shouting that I had destroyed her family and hurling insults at me. Then her sister decided to call the police. The police arrived and took me into custody. I requested the waiter to contact my lawyer, since I doubted the police would allow me to make the call myself. Luckily, my lawyer had planned ahead and ensured they had copies of the surveillance tapes. After reviewing the footage, the police released me. The tapes clearly showed me calmly sending the champagne to their table and engaging in a composed conversation with them. It demonstrated that I was merely defending myself. If it weren't for my lawyer's preparation and the presence of those surveillance camera recordings, I doubt the police would have let me go. It turns out, they were friends of my mother-in-law. Sharon reached out to my hotel room and requested to have a conversation. We met in the hotel lobby, and I made sure that our interaction was being recorded. She asked me why I had done what I did to her and her family. I looked at her with surprise and calmly explained that I had discovered their plan against me and had taken action before they could harm me. I revealed that I had found out about her long-lasting affair with Jim. Then I posed a question to her. Why did she marry me if she had such hatred towards me? I didn't mention that I had wired the entire house or that I had been spying on her. She had lost her job, house and cars, while Jim had also lost his house and job. They had no choice but to move in with her parents. Her response was that it was nothing personal. She initially entered the relationship to distance herself from her family, and she admitted that she found it amusing to make me do things for her. She even mentioned that they took pleasure in the fact that I was getting involved after they did. Curious, I asked her why she didn't simply divorce me when she met Jim. She explained that at the time it was entertaining for her, and she believed that this way she could secure everything she desired. I then questioned her how well that plan was working out for her.